Dr. Octopus made his first appearance in the 3rd issue of the Amazing Spider-Man series, so he's been around basically as long as the wall crawler himself, and over the decades this dude has done some pretty messed up stuff. So today, we're going to talk all about it. These are the worst things that Doc Ock has ever done. But before we get too far into things, I need to give a big thank you to my absolute favorite sponsor, Magic Spoon. I have been insanely busy lately, and I'm not always able to eat a full meal, so during these times, I eat just way too much cereal. Well, Magic Spoon is phenomenal because it's actually good for me. I'm talking 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, 4 net grams of carbs, and only 140 calories in each serving. This stuff is keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb, but the taste, it's just so good. Magic Spoon knows that I am absolutely addicted to Frosted, which is why they keep sending me so many boxes of it. Seriously, this isn't a part of the ad, but like I said, this is essentially all I'm eating these days. If you want to try Magic Spoon for yourself, then just go to magicspoon.com/Drake to build your own variety box, including flavors like maple waffle, cinnamon, or blueberry, and use my code DRAKE for $5 off. And if you aren't 100% satisfied, then you can get a complete refund, no questions asked. They even started shipping to Canada and the UK. So once again, that is magicspoon.com/Drake and use the code DRAKE for $5 off. But now, let's get back to the video. Now, I want to make it clear that for this video, I'm not going to be talking about simple stuff like robbing banks or holding people hostage, because then we would be here all day. But also, this isn't going to strictly be crimes, just bad stuff that Octavius has done. For instance, that haircut might not be illegal, but it sure as hell should be. But in all seriousness, Otto was doing bad stuff even before he became Dr. Octopus. One example is how he approached Dr. Stephen Strange about medical applications for his research, but since Strange was still a pompous jerk back in those days, he rejected Octavius in an extremely dickish manner. A year later, after Stephen had the accident that cost him his hands, Otto saw him on the street, drunk out of his mind, and instead of being the better man and help Strange get back on his feet, Otto just threw a 20 at him. But okay, I know that y'all really want to hear about the stuff that Octavius did after becoming a supervillain. Well, this is something that I talked about in my dedicated video all about the various crimes that Spider-Man has committed over the years, but during one of their many confrontations, Dr. Octopus blasted Spider-Man with a beam that gave him hardcore amnesia. And looking to take advantage of the situation, Octavius convinced Spidey they were actually partners in crime. Now, all that Otto was able to do before Peter snapped out of it was convince him to do a little bit of burglary, but this wouldn't be the only time that Ock was able to get heroes to work for him. I mean, hell, he once used robots to directly take control of the Avengers and had them try to kill Spider-Man. Another thing worth mentioning is that Doc Ock was the original creator of the villainous super team, the Sinister Six. Realizing that none of them could ever defeat Spider-Man on their own, Octavius recruited Electro, Vulture, Mysterio, Kraven the Hunter, and the Sandman to help him out. Although their first scheme, which was just kidnapping Betty Brant and Aunt May, thus forcing Spider-Man to fight the team one by one to hopefully wear him out, was pretty low stakes. But the Sinister Six has become much more ferocious and deadly over the years, becoming a constant thorn in Spider-Man's side, along with the entire planet, which we will be getting into here in a bit. While kidnapped by the Sinister Six, Aunt May was instantly attracted to Otto, and it sure as hell wasn't Stockholm Syndrome, because at this period in time, May was being written as borderline senile and didn't even realize that she had been kidnapped. I go into more information in the dedicated video about May's surprisingly robust love life, but later on she got work as Octavius' housekeeper, and under his employ, Doc Ock intercepted a letter that was sent to her informing May that she inherited an island in Canada that was rich in uranium and also had an abandoned nuclear reactor on it. Now, I'm sure you have many questions, like who left her the island? Why was the facility abandoned? Nobody knows. I mean, hell, I even read an interview about this issue with the book's writer, and he didn't comment on it. Anyway, to get his hands on the reactor, even though it was abandoned and he could have just, broken in and used it, Dr. Octopus decided to exploit Aunt May's attraction to him and tried to marry her. But Spider-Man was able to break up the wedding. However, Otto decided to go to the island despite not having any legal claim to it, which again, he should have just done in the first place, and was intercepted by the mob boss Hammerhead. When the two of them tussled, the vibrations of the fight caused the reactor to explode, and it was later revealed that Otto survived the experience by wrapping himself in his arms, which is about as absurd as Indiana Jones jumping into a fridge to survive a nuke. But whatever. Despite Octavius seemingly only being interested in Aunt May for her inheritance, he actually developed strong feelings for her, and when he took over all of New York's technology years later, he discovered that she was getting remarried. So he did what any sane person would do when they found out that their ex had moved on. used the combined power of every machine in the city to completely sabotage their wedding. But Spidey was able to beat him, and things went off without a hitch. Well, except for Aunt May got hitched. But separately from her, Otto also used connections to have his ex-fiancée fired from her job after their engagement fell through, so it's not like this was new behavior. But okay, let's get off of his love life and into some of the more dangerous stuff. Octavius once hijacked a plane that was transporting a general from an unnamed Asian country, and he held everyone aboard for ransom. Now, considering that the general was apparently a vicious warmonger, it's probably not that much of a bad thing, but the rest of the staff on board was more innocent, and the kidnapping was likely to cause even more national tension, so it's pretty bad. Another time, Ox stole a neutron bomb in order to kill everyone in New York City. This time, though, there was no intent of a ransom, and he was doing it just for kicks. Like, he was even going to give the city just enough of a warning so that people would be aware of their impending doom, and that's messed up. Okay, now this one is just plain bonkers. So Dr. Octopus once again assembled the Sinister Six and used them to launch a chemical into the atmosphere that made cocaine cause people to convulse when they used it. Now, we should hopefully all know that criminalizing addicts is a really bad plan. But even though Otto claimed that he was trying to cure addiction by force with this chemical, he was really trying to exploit the rich and powerful, since lots of them were addicted to coke in the 90s, and his true goal was to exploit them since he had the only cure for his cure, which would allow them to keep using. Oh, Ock was also straight up murdering folks during this scene, and also the chemicals that he launched into space were rapidly dissolving the ozone layer. Now, Sandman was trying to be a good guy at this point in time and was only brought aboard because Ock was threatening to blow up the family that he was living with, but when he turned on the Sinister Six, Ock turned him into glass. By the way, this whole thing happened again a couple of years later, but that time, Otto actually shattered him. Anyway, Spider-Man was able to neutralize the chemicals and save the day. But oddly enough, this wouldn't be the only time that Dr. Octopus got involved with climate change. See, Octavius brought together the Sinister Six, again, and sent out a network of satellites into orbit that accelerated the effects of climate change. This led to the hilarious scene of Spider-Man punching the chameleon who was disguised as Al Gore, and this whole plot was for the world's government to pay Octavius and the Sinister Six to reverse the effects of his satellites and cure climate change altogether, once and for all. But in typical Otto Octavius fashion, this was all just a ruse, and he actually wanted to use the satellites to kill more than 99% of the human population. But why not 100%? Well, that's because Octavius wanted society to rebuild and remember what he had done, so that he would have this undying legacy as the world's greatest mass murderer. Now, thankfully Spidey was able to stop him, but only a few months later, Otto pulled off his greatest scheme of all time. See, he was dying, so Doc Ock swapped bodies with Spider-Man, leaving Peter to die in his place. Now, although Otto was flooded with Parker's memories, convincing him to become a superior Spider-Man, he still did some pretty messed up shit. For one, Octavius was a ruthless Spider-Man. I'm talking over-brutalizing non-powered supervillains and straight up murdering a guy with a gun. Not only that though, but Otto protected New York in the most supervillain way possible by hiring minions and putting Spider-Bot surveillance all over the city. Now, sure, it helps prioritize threats, but he was recording millions of civilians with no oversight. And as Spider-Man, Otto ruined Peter's relationship with the Avengers, got him fired from his job at Horizon Labs, blackmailed Mayor J. Jonah Jameson to give him a superhero prison that was being shut down, and worst of all, he jacked off to Peter's memories of Mary Jane. Oh, not to mention that he also used the same technology that he used to take over the Avengers to mind control a bunch of villains that he was illegally keeping prisoner in his base, some of whom he broke out of actual prison to form the Superior Six. Yeah, I mean, he was forcing them to be heroes, but that is still a complete violation of bodily autonomy. Of course, Peter later on regained control over his body and expelled Otto from it, but he made a new cloned body for himself that was a hybrid of his and Peter's DNA to become the Superior Octopus, and he joined Hydra when they took over the United States. Now, I understand that it is hard to compete with literally joining the Nazis, but Octavius was able to regain his original form by making a deal with the devil himself, Mephisto. And you know what? I'm pretty sure that literally working with the devil is as bad as it gets. But before I let y'all go, let's talk about some accidental honorable mentions. Perhaps the most notable of Ock's accidental atrocities was the death of Captain Stacy, which happened when Octavius smashed some bricks that fell to the ground below. Captain Stacy, seeing that they were going to hit a kid, jumped in the way and died instead. This was the first time since Uncle Ben's death that someone that Peter had cared about was killed as a result of him being Spider-Man, and it made things really clear to readers that the supporting cast was not safe. Something that was proven again when Captain Stacy's daughter, Gwen, was killed really not too long later. Another notable first is that Doc Ock was the first person to ever unmask Peter Parker, but since he was sick at the time and lost a lot of his strength, everyone, Otto included, just thought that Peter had dressed up as Spider-Man to save his girlfriend, whom Octavius had kidnapped. Years later though, he did get to unmask Parker properly and fully learn his identity just a few issues before dying. I'd also be remiss to not mention that when Octavius once worked with a company called New You, they brought people back to life against their will through cloned bodies. Now, most of the folks were cool with this, but they did have a deadly virus and died horrific deaths all over again. Plus, when he later expanded upon New You's technology to create his superior octopus body, his cloning chambers were hijacked by interdimensional vampire beings called the Inheritors, which allowed them to be reborn and wreak havoc on the Spider-Verse. So yeah, all of that wasn't intentional, but it's bad stuff nonetheless. But if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? I have plugged a lot of my other videos in this, so maybe go check out some of those. And if you like Spider-Man content, then I actually have a playlist with every single one of my Spider-Man videos in one convenient place, so maybe give that a click. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.